enjoying this immensely. And I probably wouldn't have been able to return to Jerusalem with the kind of energy that I've got if I hadn't taken those 18 months on Dodge and Logic. There was also things that happened in Dodge and Logic that will spin off into other things. The burlesque shoot to accompany Melinda's article in issue 2, that has led to the photographer, Mitch Jenkins, asking me if I want... He was talking about doing a little 10-minute film loop, a film reel, just to show that he could make films based upon the same people and the same venue that we did the burlesque shoot in. And I sort of said, oh, if you're doing a little 10-minute film, do you want me to write a little 10-minute screenplay? He said, yeah, that couldn't hurt. This was going to be a real innocent little 10-minute film, you know, really low budget. And then somebody heard that I was writing a film, and then we got all these offers, and it's got completely out of control. I have no idea where this is heading, but it's somewhere really peculiar, and you'll probably hear about it. We're actually starting the film, probably starting shooting it in August, and this is just a 10-minute film, but there's possible stuff that could come after. So that's something that wouldn't have happened without Dodge and Logic, you know. This has been a great experience. I mean, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all of the contributors and to thank Gavin and Alex from Hoax, our brilliant design team, who, you know, every issue we're keeping it up there. And I would especially like to, I'd like to thank Tony. I'd like to thank Tony Bennett, our co-publisher, doing a great job with a magazine that probably seemed to be willfully causing self-destruction, you know. And I'd particularly like to thank the remarkable Quinn Callas and the wonderful Joe Brown, the two best editors. They've been practically doing this entire magazine themselves, and we've been sticking my name on the front. They are brilliant. Could we have a huge round of applause for all of those people I've talked about? Alright, that's enough. It was all me really, I was just being nice, you know. No, it was a great team of people and it all came together like a dream, and I really hope that it's going to continue to carry on working like that. Now, I've probably rambled for at least 15 minutes, 20 minutes, so I figure that's my work done for the evening really. I mean, I'd like to, can we throw this open? Is there a roaming microphone? Yeah, so any questions out there? Yes. Yeah. Okay.
Hello?
Is the microphone?
Hello?
Yeah.
Do you have any interest in working in computer games? And if you do, can we make it?
Sorry, can you say again?
Yeah. Do you have any interest in making video games or writing for computer games? And if you do, could we make it?
Well, it's funny you should ask that. It's
Am I too late?
well, it's like what I had been thinking was that. Now, this is probably going to be a cryptic answer, and I apologise for that in advance. But give it a few months, and you'll probably know a bit more. But see, the way things have always worked for me is that I kind of write a comic that is meant to be, how to put it, a comic. The clue being in the word comic, I suppose. And then what you get is, you get a bunch of comic industry professionals, or people of that ilk come along and take my comic and make it into a bunch of things that it was never intended to be. Then I go into a huge strop and they take long lens pictures of me and Melinda walking across the racecourse in Northampton and say, you know, moody, sort of comic writing, kind of neurotic Alan Moore goes out for an angry walk on the day that Watchmen is being premiered. You know, I mean, I wasn't beaming, you know, it wasn't a particularly sunny day. I wasn't even aware that the Watchmen film was premiering, you know. So this is how it works. And then people will come along and make the thing that was never meant to be a film into a whole range of other things that it was never meant to be either. So, yeah, you get a lot of poisonous ranting from me, and which I find as boring as everybody else. You know, I don't want to keep having to say blah blah blah, I hate films, blah blah blah. You know, it's tiresome. But what I thought was, wouldn't it be funny if, like, I came up with an idea that was like brilliant and had all these other ideas kind of embedded in it that was actually thinking about, hey, this is the 21st century, people want to expand everything into multiple platforms, into games and all sorts of things. So what if I embraced that? What if I came up with a concept that could spin out into all sorts of things, but only in the way that I want it to spin out? That could be quite diabolical, couldn't it? It's sort of... so yeah, I have been thinking along the lines of all sorts of the stuff that you were mentioning, all at once, all as part of some coherent mega project, which you really will have to wait to hear the rest of. But yeah, there's possibly going to be some surprising stuff happening in the next 12 months, you know. But that's as much as I can say. You didn't hear it from me. Any other questions?
So can I help you make it?
What's the news on the Big Bumper Book of Magic?
The Big Bumper Book of Magic. It's about half finished. It only progresses by a couple of pages at a time when I get together with Steve Moore. Because I'm co-writing it with Steve, and that is really necessary. We're having a ton of fun on it, and I mean, both of us are kind of, I know this is going to be very difficult to believe, especially regarding me, but both of us are kind of egotistical, and I assumed that I knew everything about magic. Well, I assumed I knew everything about everything, but particularly about magic. But no, I barely knew anything, as it turns out. And me and Steve have been having real fun researching this. We found out who Faust was, and nobody's ever worked this out before. It's like, yes, there was the first Faust that was mentioned, who talks of himself as Georgius Sibyllicus Faustus Secundus, and he was basically a paedophile and a diabolist who was first mentioned in a hostile letter from Trithemius, who said, "Don't go near that Faust, he's a paedophile and diabolist." That was pretty much the gist of it. There was a completely blameless Johannes Faust, who was a doctor of divinity. This is where the doctor bit comes in, at Heidelberg. Then there was a priest who was in a tavern. He had heard of Johannes Faust of Heidelberg. Georgius Severicus Faust, the diabolist and paedophile, comes in, and this, I think it was a canon or something, he overhears the conversation. He writes a letter saying, well, I saw that Johannes Faust, the so-called divinity of Heidelberg, and he was talking all of this paedophile, diabolist nonsense, you know. He made a mistake. So the two people then got conflated as one guy. And then you get a load of just pulp stories about Faust. And by the time Christopher Marlowe writes his version, when I was looking at this with Steve Moore, I said, actually all this, we covered this about 2 months ago. This is all Simon Magus. Simon Magus, he was supposed to have, he had a prostitute in his employ who he claimed had been Helen of Troy. Simon Magus was carried through the air by demons in his duel with St. Peter, until St. Peter prays really hard to God and the demons drop Simon Magus, you know, which just proves that magic is no doubt good, you know, and that God always wins. You know, it was a propaganda story. Now, that was a propaganda story to discredit Gnosticism. Back in the 1st century, when Gnosticism was Christianity's main rival. So the figure of Simon Magus was more or less drummed up out of two different individuals to discredit Gnosticism. When you get around to the Faust story, yeah, he's got Helen of Troy, he's carried through the air by demons, he's brought down by his lust for knowledge. And we thought, oh, that's interesting. You know, like, so you've got the bogeyman, the Christian bogeyman, Simon Magus, the first black magician. You've got that resurrected, not at the beginnings of Christianity, but at the beginnings of Protestantism. That's interesting. And then I said, hang on, this Georgius Severicus Faustus Secundus, he's the first Faust mentioned in letters, in history. And Steve said, yeah. And I said, well, you're the classical scholar, Steve, but doesn't Secundus mean, what, second? Just a wild guess there, you know. And he says, my word, Alan, you're right, you know. So we thought, well, this is the first Faust. Why is he the second Faust? And I said, could it have been folklore? Could there have been some folklore expression that a folkloric Faust? So we thought, might be. Let's have a look in the Latin dictionary. And we looked up Faustus, and it means fortunate, lucky, prosperous. And that makes perfect sense. I mean, like, the lucky man, you know, Prospero, Fortunato. These are all good names for magicians. I figured that was the original Faust. It was just a folklore term. Oh, he's a bit of a Faust. He's a bit of a lucky man. You know, so Yeah, that's the story of Faust. That was just one page of the Moon and Serpent Bumper Book of Magic. This is pretty fucked up, you know? Another couple of years is my guess, but I might be lying on that, you know. I've been saying that for a couple of years now.